The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
FBI raids the home of the former president. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Dozens of agents descending on the Trump Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida.
President Trump's home in Mar-a-Lago comes under siege by the Biden administration's FBI with the approval of Attorney General Merrick Garland and FBI Director Christopher Wray. The former president, aghast, said this in a statement: "These are dark times for our nation, as my beautiful home, Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida, is under siege, raided and occupied by a large group of FBI agents. Nothing like this has ever happened to a president of the United States before."
Fox's Kevin Corke, the former president, saying in a statement it's the weaponization of the justice system. Sources tell Fox News the agents took boxes of documents from Mr. Trump's days in the White House, reportedly in a dispute with the National Archives. Trump family members say the former president had allowed the FBI to review those documents months ago. Harvard Law professor emeritus Alan Dershowitz says this looks like an overreach by the Justice Department.
The key point that everybody's missing here is that Donald Trump was not in Mar-a-Lago. So there was no reason not to issue a subpoena, returnable tomorrow, so that there's no claim that Trump could have destroyed anything. This should have been a subpoena, not a search warrant.
Professor Dershowitz tells Fox's Hannity at minimum they've violated Justice Department rules. After touring flood-ravaged eastern Kentucky on Monday, President Biden pledging to rebuild the area better than it was before the floods.
The bad news for you is I'm coming back because I want to see it.
Governor Andy Beshear saying the number of people killed in the flooding has now reached 38. The president also said the climate spending bill passed by the Senate on Sunday secures America's future more than almost anything Washington has done in decades. The House scheduled to vote on that bill Friday. America is listening to Fox News.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Half a day. This is Clara Manglona from Security Title. A power of attorney can be a useful tool in a real estate transaction, but if abused, it can result in devastating loss. Choosing your representative should be done with the utmost care and should be very specific about the powers being granted. To mitigate loss, the team at Security Title confirms with the owner prior to using a power of attorney to sell the property. Each transaction is unique. Let the professionals at Security Title use our experience to facilitate a secure closing. We are here to help.
The entertainment world mourning the death of Olivia Newton-John.
Olivia Newton-John sold more than 100 million records and boasted dozens of singles in a career spanning more than half a century. Her biggest hit, Physical, in 1981, topping the charts for a record 10 weeks. In 1978, Newton-John landed the iconic role of Sandy in Grease, starring alongside John Travolta. Newton-John died Monday morning at her ranch in Southern California, surrounded by friends and family. She was 73 years old. Steve Rappaport, Fox News.
All three men charged federally with hate crimes in the death of Ahmaud Arbery, a black man who was out for a run in Georgia in February of 2020, have now learned their fate. Father and son, Greg and Travis McMichael, each getting life in prison. Neighbor William Roddy Bryan, who recorded the killing on his cell phone, sentenced to 35 years. The three men have already been sentenced on state charges. Voters will choose a Republican nominee for governor in Wisconsin on Tuesday. Former President Trump endorsing businessman Tim Michels against former Lieutenant Governor Rebecca Kleefitch, who has the support of former Vice President Pence and ex-Governor Scott Walker. In Florida, an alligator mystery.
Florida Fish and Wildlife officials have been compelled to euthanize a nearly 5-foot-long alligator. The animal was spotted last month with a knife stuck in its head. A trapper caught the reptile. Now the Florida FWC is trying to find out who committed such an offense. Along with some alligator safety tips posted on its Facebook page recently, they stated that it is illegal to intentionally kill, injure, possess, or or capture gators unless given special authority. The Fish and Wildlife Commission is asking anyone with any information to come forward. Karen McHugh, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Hafaday and mabuhay. I am Dennis Rodriguez Jr., a proud Filipino Gomanian who cares about our island and our people. Throughout my years of government service, I have advocated for adequate health care, education, and a stronger public safety workforce. I support Lou and Josh, and I'm confident that this team will prioritize the needs of our people like they have done throughout the pandemic. There is more work to be done, and I'm confident that Lou and Josh are the right leaders to move our island forward. Mga kapwa kong Pilipino, maraming pong salamat sa tiwala ninyo sa akin noon senador po ako. Hinihiling ko po uli ang tulong at tiwala ninyo. Sana po iboto ninyo si Lou at Josh para gobernador at vice-gobernador. Sila po ang ating pwedeng tiwalaan. I'm voting for Lou and Josh, and I'm humbly asking my friends and family to vote for them too. I'm all in.
This is Governor Lou Leon Guerrero, and I approve this message.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Yesterday, I started a review of our local firearms law in light of the Supreme Court's Bruin decision, which is pretty broad, and it says that the basic holding is that people have a right to not only keep, but also to bear arms, meaning to carry them in public, and that any restrictions that states place on that Second Amendment right would enjoy strict scrutiny by the legislature or by the judiciary. So I was going through our own firearms rules here to see where the problems lie. We have an extremely strict firearms regulation scheme in place here, Public Law 20-23. And yesterday I talked in terms of the putative owner, the lawful owner, signs required to be posted at gun stores, and the fact that any person, legal or natural, who transfers, gives, etc., to a minor is guilty of a felony, 5 years in jail and $5,000. Only one exception. I'm going to pick up there. Going on to Section 9 of 20-223, any person who negligently entrusts a firearm to a minor is guilty of a felony, which shall be punishable by a term of imprisonment not less than 1 year and a fine of not less than $1,000. Negligently entrusts is a term of art. I'll give you an example, not dealing with guns, but let's say with cars. Let's say that I let Mr. X borrow my car and he gets in an accident. He's in a collision and it's his fault. He was negligent. He did not maintain a proper lookout and he ran into the car ahead of him. Am I liable? No. Am I liable if he was doing an errand for me? Maybe, probably. Suppose, though, that I knew Mr. X was a really poor driver, and in the last year he'd had 7 collisions, he's been numerous traffic tickets, etc., and anyone who knew what Mr. X's driving record was like would say, this guy is not a safe driver. I let him borrow my collar. Am I liable? Yes. Negligent and trustful.
And you deserve it.
Yes. Same thing goes with a firearm. According to the statute here, any person who gives, etc., loans a firearm to a minor is guilty of a felony, etc. And then the next section, any person who negligently entrusts a firearm to a minor is guilty of a felony. And then going on to section 10, strict liability. Now, let me tell you what strict liability means. Let's say that I live next to a creamery, a place where farmers drink their milk. The milk is pasteurized, put in cartons, get ready for shipping, and is shipped to grocery stores, etc. And let's say that the boiler at that creamery explodes, and I live next to the creamery and it destroys my house. Is the creamery liable for the damage to my house? Well, if I could prove that the management of the creamery was negligent, yes. And it probably wouldn't be that hard, but they're not just liable because my house got destroyed. Now, let's say instead of a creamery, let's say that it was a dynamite factory, right? The dynamite factory explodes and destroys my house, strict liability. Doesn't matter if they were negligent, used due care throughout, it just doesn't matter. They are strictly liable. That's what strict liability means. It's a heavy rap. And Section 10 says that every putative owner or lawful owner of a firearm is strictly liable in tort for the death or injury to any person resulting from the use or possession of said firearm by a minor. So if your 17-and-a-half-year-old cousin comes over to your house, he finds your pistol laying around, he goes out and he shoots somebody, and he shoots somebody, you are strictly liable in damages for that. Strict liability. You don't even need to, the plaintiff doesn't even need to show that you're liable. Next section, 11. Any person shall be entitled to recover damages in a civil action in an amount not to exceed $100,000 from the parents or guardians who are responsible for the death or injury to a person caused by said minor's use of said firearms in his possession, who causes the death or injury of a person as a result of the use of the firearm. You got kids living in a house with guns, be careful. I'll stop there and I'll come back to this tomorrow. We'll go on to section 16.140. That's where we'll pick it up tomorrow, which is the 10 August. Okay, so let's see what we've got on the card for today. Wait a minute, I better do Jemmy Cotney first, huh?
I thought you were just going to skip it because, you know.
Well, I would, except I'm going to have a little fun with it. Because the title here looks to me like the government is getting involved in something that amounts to child abuse, potentially even criminal sexual conduct. Yeah. Programan Pinilan helps both parents and child care providers apply soon. So Programan Pinilan is something that the government is getting involved in. Let me see if I can find the particulars here. The governor's office announced on Friday that more than $860,000 grant from the governor's community care and after-school child program were awarded to 22 child care providers. This specific program, also part of Programan Panilan Ifamaguahan, helps ensure that parents return to the workforce with safe and affordable child care options. So these child care providers and others that are eligible for money from the Programan Panilan are given money. hate to say this, to moon children. Yeah.
Moon?
Moon. And I'm using that in the, what is the name of that dictionary? The slang dictionary online? Yeah. I was just shocked when I saw this. We're spending $860,000 for something that looks like child abuse on its face, potentially criminal sexual conduct, to pay people to moon babies, moon children. I tell you, I'm just shocked. So I'm waiting for tomorrow. No. Kada dia nai talo ani uli somnak. Lo kada puengi uli pulan. Lo te tungu nai di gubiatno guaha programan penilan. Ay de not masi e famagoon. This is shameful, Jose.
I hate to ask what. So what does it mean? Pinelan?
Well, I said, fino tomorrow night, kada puengi uli inai e pulan. Kada dia uli inai a somnak, right? Get it?
I know pulan.
Yeah, so, chamorro, if you're changing chamorro from a verb to a participle, you add an infix, like um or in or something like that. Programan panilan. Waha.
Maybe they're getting them ready for the...
Yeah, well, we'll come back to it later on. I'm hoping that Peter Santos is on board today. Or author na tauta tungo fino tomorrow. Mas malig ni guaho ne. Well, Sarita Garin, who on Ratio is also known as Pretty Sarita Garin, says Saipan will be giving out $300 CUC voucher a month for 3 months, starting with bills in August. What happened to Guam? Well, we got a program on Pinilan. We're way ahead of those guys, unless you're a baby, unless you're a child. So, let's see. Mike Grace Blas says, Quintusing linguata sa gof mames. Very sweet. He likes it. Okay, I have a couple left over from yesterday that I'm going to spend a little time with today. On Sunday, they had a Sunday forum. And the Sunday forum, they said, are you going to, we got early voting now. Are you going to vote early? Why or why not? So I submitted my little piece. Chris Dombrowski submitted his. The Daily News submitted theirs, and the Daily News didn't answer their own question. They pulled a Chris Dombrowski. They talked about what you should do when you're going to vote. So here's Chris Dombrowski. I'll just give you the highlights here. He says, early voting is easy. Choose candidates who research, no issues. And he says, since I was scheduled to leave Island on July 29 and not return in time to cast a vote on August 27, I went ahead and voted on July 28 at the Westin. It was fast and easy. The ability to freely vote is a sacred. You can't use sacred like that on tall tales, guys. Sacred duty, the only way to sustain our democracy is to be involved. I'm pretty sure I have voted in every election since I arrived on island. With regard to what qualities I look for in a candidate, it is someone that does their research and homework in regards to certain policies and is not afraid to try something new. He's probably a fan of Programman Pinalan. It is a perfect environment to experiment and try new things. I look for candidates that offer the best public policy responses to the challenges we face. He already answered the question, but he can't stop talking. And then he says, he starts out, I demand that candidates do their due diligence and understand the policies. For instance, the war on drugs. Anyone can do their homework and research the origins of the war on drugs and discover that racism was the primary mover. I thought it was drugs. Silly me. Racism was the prime mover.
That was written?
Yeah, it's in the column. It's his response, yeah. I suppose something to do with the Insular cases, right? Yeah. Then his next thing is universal basic income. In light of the pandemic and its resulting unprecedented unemployment, has any candidate considered universal basic income for our island population? Why not? Uniform basic income is a government-sponsored program in which every citizen or eligible resident would receive a flat monthly payment. Its purpose is to ensure all people have the means to purchase necessities and improve their quality. Oh, that's a great idea. Uniform basic income would decrease the financial stress faced on our island's unemployed and allow them to stay unemployed a little bit longer.
No kidding.
Which would allow them to focus on education, improving job skills, or dealing with personal issues while having enough income to meet basic life requirements.
Yeah, a basic motivator to get over all those issues is to get a job.
Yeah.
You got to work, so get over yourself.
So he wants uniform basic, and I've seen this, in some of the lefty stuff that we need uniform basic income. And that would be fine, but who's going to pay for it? Yeah. And then he goes on to say, how about a 4-day week? In this age of mass consumerism and the insane preoccupation of society with the acquisition of consumer goods, we need to become aware of the personal health and environmental impact of consumerism. The government and corporations are now one and the same. We, the people, should be standing up for ourselves as human beings and not treated like robots. As important as it is for candidates to do their homework and know their stuff, it's just as important for citizens to do the same, to challenge the candidates. As my former professor of public administration courses that I took in the mid-90s, Dr. Judith Guthertz, used to ask, are we stupid? I just don't know what to do. I'm inclined to say yes.
This is a Sunday Forum.
This is the Sunday Forum. Yeah. This is not Babylon Bee. Yeah. So, as I said, the Daily News didn't answer their own question. I did. So here's mine. Voting is not like buying a pair of shoes. Now, I got to warn you, I somehow slid by the mixed metaphor police here. I'm buying shoes and sitting in the stands till the buzzer sounds, but I seem to have gotten away with it. Voting is not like buying a pair of shoes. Periodically, you need a new pair. You shop, compare styles, price, quality, etc. When you've made your selection, you pick a convenient time, plunk down your money, and done. During the process, stability reigns. Your feet don't change, nor do the shoes. The political process leading up to an election is anything but stable. Parties and candidates employ strategies and tactics designed to best their opponents, or in the case of the legislature, their fellow party members. Which medium to use for advertising, messaging, and timing are the elements of campaign. Early voting adds an imponderable to the process. Traditionally, campaign advertising blitzes fill the last 10 days before the election. Early voting could mean that the traditional blitz will be moot, most people having already voted. As I wrote it, I said moot or mute, but never mind. The opacity of early voting process requires candidates and parties to proceed as though every vote were uncast right until the polls open. This voter wants to have all the cards dealt, second metaphor here, before he plays his hand. Proceeding on the basis that there is a positive correlation between a well-run campaign and a good public servant, I want to stay in the stands until the final buzzer. I'm not going to leave early to avoid the crush in the parking lot. I'm going to stay till the end of the game. As an example, let's consider the recent phenomenon labeled Williamsgate and the Blacklist 12 and the fallout arising therefrom. Should such an event occur after voting early, is the convenience dimension really worth it? In an undertaking in which an October surprise really surprises no one, and an aw shucks cancels out 100 attaboys, being informed trumps convenience. See you at the polls. I'll buy new shoes after the election. Well, at least I tried to stick to the question, even though I had 3 metaphors in there, Jose. I like metaphors.
They work.
Yeah, like this one. Okay, so that was my contribution to the Daily News editorial page on Sunday. I felt like the readers deserved something that was readable and entertaining for a change. I couldn't resist. It was my sacred duty. No. I take care of my sacred duties at Mass and preparation for Mass.
Well, it's refreshing to hear a blue star submittal after hearing a blue moon.
Yeah, so no, programen pinilan, malakeno pat baba, pat apata. So I'm looking for posts here. On Facebook here. Who needs the Chamorro language book when you got Tall Tales? Yeah. Okay, so then we take a peek at the card. I'm starting out with Vanessa versus the Blacklist Dozen, and Vanessa played a really dirty trick on the Blacklist Dozen. I'll get to that in a minute. I've got the FBI versus Trump. I've got Tom the Plumber Shea versus Lou. Dennis and $112,184.26 per annum versus Michael San Nicolas. DeSantis versus abortion. DeSantis versus mind virus. Gaslighting versus orange rice. And Justice Thomas versus hocus pocus. All right, so, we always start out with Paul Zerzan and systemic racism. You know the analogy here. The rice is orange, but the narrative says it's red. And if you have the temerity to say at a fiesta, man, I really like the orange rice, you will be corrected on the spot. You may very well be canceled. You might even be sent home without supper. Because we all know that when it comes to the narrative versus the facts, the narrative always prevails. Let's see, I've got somewhere here. Yeah. Let's take a short break and I'll come back to the 36-34 part of the agenda.
There's still time to register for fall 2022 classes at the Guam Community College. Secure your seat by logging on to guamcc.edu or drop by the campus weekdays 8 to 5 and Saturdays 8 a.m. to 12 noon. The last day to register is Friday, August 12th. Get your future started at GCC Guam Community College, providing 45 years of student success by putting students first, mission always.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarty Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So I'm looking at the agenda for the next Board of Education meeting. One interesting item on 6.3a. School readiness for school year 2022 and 2023. That should be pretty interesting given the expose and Candid News that they're not cool and they're not going to be cool. Then we go down to item 7, new business. You know what the new business is, Jose? Neither do I. So once again, they made the classic error putting an item in the agenda without describing it in such detail that it puts the public on notice as to what they're going to discuss. You can't just say new business. And then every time I look at the agenda for this, for the department, for the Board of Ed, I see the same thing. Item 7, as you were, item 8, executive session. 1, personnel matters. 5 GCA section 811A. 2, matters within the scope of the Public Employee Management Relations Act, including collective bargaining. 5 GCA section 811B. Now, you'll recall that 811A is the one that says that the management does not have to disclose, but it can. It's not prohibited from disclosure. Personnel matters in a personnel file. And everybody has played this exactly wrong. They think it's anything they don't want to talk about. So I question this, how they have a matter that comes within that section every single meeting. And then even more troubling is 8111B, which is matters within the scope of PEMRA, the Public Employee Management Relations Act. So I can understand that. Let's say that the union, that the board and the union are negotiating on a new contract for teachers. Well, board union negotiations involve a certain amount of strategy and tactics. And some of it is kind of like playing poker. You don't want to show the other side what you got in your hand when you're making your bets. So public disclosure of the board's negotiating policy would put the board at an extreme disadvantage. So I can understand that why we have that exemption, and I hope the board uses it wisely. But are they negotiating a contract every month? Now, my cynical, suspicious mind tells me this. They want to have an executive session every month. But they know that some character is out there looking at their notices every day. And they know that if they just put down executive session, they're going to be in a heap of trouble. So council said, well, you can always do executive sessions for this. So like new business, they stick it in there, figuring that nobody's going to question them on it because executive sessions are shielded from the public. And they go into executive session and talk about whatever the hell they want to. That's my suspicion. So I think as soon as I get a little extra time, I'm going to have to start picking on the Board of Education to get to the bottom of this and let them know that you better be talking about those two things when you're in executive session. Because a knowing violation of the open government law is a misdemeanor. Okay, so much for that part of the card. Moving right along, I've got Vanessa versus the Blacklist 12. Now, a little background here. Vanessa Williams, and I feel like, just in case you've forgotten who Vanessa Williams is, she's issued a quote that when they build the obelisk honoring the history of Tall Tales with the brass plaque on the bottom of it showing Jose's beard.
It will outlast me.
And other important elements of the show, Tall Tales T-shirt, Lee Weber's spelling of Tall Tales, and so on. Vanessa Williams' quotation should be inscribed on there somewhere as something that was probably read as often as the editorial from the Daily News, but probably has a greater impact. And this is what Vanessa Williams has said. It's impossible to separate our choice of whether and when to have children from every other choice in our lives. They're all the same thing. They're all of equal importance, whether to take a new job, whether to go on vacation, whether to do a staycation, whether to have a child, whether to have an abortion. It's all the same thing. It just doesn't make any difference at all. Okay, so this is what Vanessa Williams did. Well, Vanessa, is counsel for the Democrat Party. Now, you would think that as counsel for the Democrat Party, she would like to see a Democrat victory. She would like to see Democrat Party candidates triumph. And you'd think that she would lend her support to any and all Democrat candidates for any and all offices. We've got a primary coming up. Only 15 Democrats will survive the primary. We go to the polls, and the 15 Democrat candidates that get the most votes will advance to the general. The others will not. So we would think that counsel for the party would know that I can't favor one candidate over the other because my duty is to the party. So after we've sifted and winnowed here, and we're down to 15 candidates, I'm going to back every single one of them. And then there's a large parenthesis here. My own personal preferences must be put aside because I'm counsel for the party. Lawyers have a duty to their clients. But that's not what Vanessa did. Vanessa published a list that is known as the Dirty Dozen, the Blacklist 12. Let's see, there's another one for it too. There's another name for it. Probably used it myself.
I'll create one.
It'll come to me.
Black Marker Mayhem.
Black Marker Mayhem, yeah. So she put this list out of 12 people, and she put out the sample ballot, and then she crossed out the names of 12 Democrats on the sample ballot and advised those who got her email or Facebook or whatever it was, don't vote for these cats. And here's the list. Michael San Nicolas and Sabrina Salas Montanani. No surprise there. Michael San Nicolas says he's anti-abortion. And of course, Vanessa is the poster, dare I use this term, the poster child for abortion. I guess I couldn't. It's just there couldn't be a poster child for abortion. It's an impossibility. It's an absolute oxymoron.
And according to the governor, even if it was a surviving child,
yeah,
it should not exist.
It should not exist anyhow, because the next best thing to abortion is infanticide. Okay, the next one on the list is Talina Cruz Nelson, who introduced the Heartbeat Act. Of course, Vanessa, in accordance with Vanessa's saying, she must think Talina is really stupid. She doesn't understand that it's impossible to separate, for a woman to separate her choice of whether and when to have children from every other choice in her life. Wow. And then she gets into senatorial candidates. First item on the list, Speaker Therese Tetlahi, the number 2 ranking member of the party that Vanessa was counsel to. Then we've got Jonathan Savaris. Let's play the family game a little bit. The son of the mayor of Dedido, Guam's largest village, Guam's largest concentration of those of the Filipino ethnicity, and the block of voters that almost every candidate seeks out one way or another, including Dennis Rodriguez. Sa gustong fino Tagalog. See, Dennis, I don't know how to say that in Tagalog, so I had to say it in Chamorro. We've got Chris Barnett, Senator Joe S.N. Augustine, Amanda Shelton, another anti-abort, John Ananich, Dave Duenas, Franklin Bunker Mano, and Armando Dominguez. Armando's been around so long, he's even older than I am, believe it or not.
And I hear he's grateful he was on the list.
It's probably the only time he ever gets mentioned, huh?
But we're mentioning it 5 times now.
Yeah. So that's the Dirty Dozen, the Blacklist 12. Vanessa's basket of deplorables, as it were. Don't vote for these guys. Well, here's the dirty trick, Jose. I understand that Vanessa has worked out a deal to get Joe Biden to endorse everyone on the list, the whole Dirty Dozen. I mean, put her out the list was bad enough, but getting Joe Biden to endorse him, I mean, that's obviously the kiss of death for any Democrat.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
That's malarkey.
Yeah, absolutely. Next, we've got the FBI versus Trump. I want to give my own personal preference here. You know, in an awful lot of countries around the world, especially what people refer to as third world countries. I don't use that term because I know what it means. At least I know what it meant. During the Cold War, the West, countries in the West, the United States, Canada, the Brits, West Germany, France, etc., were first world countries. The Union of Soviet Socialist Republics and all of its satellites and client states were third world countries. Were they called third world countries because they were not as modern and up to speed as? No, they were called third world. Second world were countries like India, who tried very hard to be non-aligned with either the first world or the third world. So I hear people tossing, we're like a third world country, without really understanding what they're saying. Oh, I know words change, and I fight that battle wherever I can. And if you think that I should loosen up a little bit, I give you what's happened to vocabulary nowadays, where we don't even know what a woman is. We can't even say mother. We've got to talk about birthing persons. So I'm not going to talk about a return to normalcy, which Warren Harding got severely criticized for using during his campaign. It's normality. And if you're talking about third world, then you're talking about countries like Vietnam, North Korea, Venezuela, etc. Although the third world bloc is somewhat disintegrated from what it was during the Cold War. So I hate to see this, anyhow, back to the point I was making, I hate to see this situation where some countries, the punishment for losing an election is that you're going to go to jail. And elections are held, and the winner goes to the presidential palace in Argentina or Chile or some other, I think Trump labeled them as shucks-hole countries. You know, countries around the world that do not have strong democratic traditions. So the loser of the election winds up being assassinated or going to prison. And you could almost bet on it. So it's no wonder they fight so hard to win the elections. Talk about a zero-sum game. And I always thought, you know, the United States must fight this tooth and nail. We should never get to that juncture. So even if we have a president that commits misconduct in office, Richard Nixon, for example, I don't want to see the guy go to jail, even if he deserves to go to jail, because I don't want to start that routine in this country. We've started it. Now we have started it. And of course, I've told you the reason, I've exposed the reason more than once on the reason that Trump was impeached. Donald Trump was impeached for good reason. Donald Trump was impeached because he has a crappy personality. Now, if that isn't enough, we need to amend the Constitution, because that's the reason. That's the reason. You know, he doesn't play with the usual rules of conventional politeness. He's too blunt. He's too outspoken. He doesn't sugarcoat his remarks. And if he has to attack somebody, he takes the gloves off and attacks them. And he's really good at what he does. So that combination, being really good at what he does and being very successful, is unpardonable for those folks over there on the left. You know, they want someone like Barack Obama. And, you know, Barack Obama was so dedicated, you know, he went to law school, but when he got out of law school, he became a community organizer in the streets of Chicago. You know, a lot of money and the prize and the fame meant nothing to him. As he sits alone in his home in Martha's Vineyard, his $15 million house in Martha's Vineyard every night, thinking about the good old days as a community organizer on the streets of Chicago. That's who the Democrats would like to see. So Trump had a crappy personality. That's why they impeached him. No conviction, of course. They were so anxious to impeach him, they even did it after he was out of office. Now, I could read the impeachment sections of the Constitution to support a post-office impeachment. Anyone with a lick of sense would never do it, because it comes from the same place as this. Oh, he lost the election. What prison are we going to send him to? We've got to punish this. He lost the election. He must be punished. He must be punished for the things he did when he was the president. So then we go on to the January 6th hearing, and I've explained my theory of what happened there. It was not an insurrection. It was a mob that invaded the Capitol. A committee of Democrats and 2 turncoat Republicans have taken on the agenda called Pin the Tail on Donald Trump. They have exhumed the remains of Leni Riefenstahl, cloned her, put her in charge of the media relationships. Leni Riefenstahl, she was Hitler's PR person. She's the person that put together the movie called Triumph of the Will in the big stadium in Munich. If you've ever seen it, you might not remember the name, but you could never forget it. Very good at putting together the visual images, the sounds, the lingo. And that's exactly what the Democrats did, you know, with their large screen TV showing you the riot, etc., never mentioning the murder that took place during the invasion of the Capitol. So they're just dead set on hanging that on Trump, disregarding any procedural formality that even looks at all like fairness. Now, the latest is to send the FBI to Trump's home in Mar-a-Lago when he's in New York. And, of course, Jonathan Turley, my buddy Jonathan Turley, who I'll come back to right after the break, usually is pretty good at cutting through the BS and getting down to what's really going on.
Half a day. This is Clara Manglona from Security Title. A power of attorney can be a useful tool in a real estate transaction, but if abused, it can result in devastating loss. Choosing your representative should be done with the utmost care and should be very specific about the powers being granted. To mitigate loss, the team at Security Title confirms with the owner prior to using a power of attorney to sell the property. Each transaction is unique. Let the professionals at Security Title use our experience to facilitate a secure closing. We are here to help.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tenactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagana and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagatan location at 479-2652 for reservations.
All right, great music, great bumper music. Is that, you know the name of the group?
Dickie Dale, was that his name? I don't know.
Yeah. Sounds like kind of like the Ventures.
Or the Ventures, right? It does sound like the Ventures.
I love the Ventures.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's Jonathan Turley. The Mar-a-Lago raid and Sandy Berger's socks is the title. The unprecedented raid on the home of former President Donald Trump has set off a firestorm of celebration and recrimination across the country. For critics, it's the long-awaited moment of FBI agents swarming over the home of Trump and a concrete step towards criminal prosecution. For supporters, it's a raid that confirms the long-standing view of the FBI willing to use any means to combat Trump. The raid will fulfill the narrative of both sides. In many ways, it will advance both causes. For Democrats, it will paint Trump as a felon in chief. And for Republicans, it will enforce the resolve to see him run again for the White House. At these moments, the most dangerous place to stand is anywhere in the middle. However, this is another moment in need for some sobering reality checks of what this does and does not mean. The most serious development was one that did not occur on Monday night. This was not apparently a warrant executed in relation to the January 6th riot. Instead, the raid appears an outgrowth of the long tension between Trump and the National Archives over material removed at the end of the Trump presidency that is subject to the Presidential Record Act. I previously testified in Congress on the seizure of the boxes at Mar-a-Lago and the authority of the archives to seek the intervention of the Attorney General to force compliance with the Presidential Records Act. I also told Congress that the PRA is rarely subject to criminal prosecution. Now, interestingly enough, there is a sentence in the PRA that says anybody who violates it shall not hold an office, a public office of trust under the United States. So the plot is going to thicken a little bit here. Well, the Presidential Records Act requires the preservation of such documents, and the removal was likely in violation of that law. It is relatively weak on enforcement elements. Presidents have long chafed at both the limitations or disclosures imposed by the Act. The 1978 law requires that memos, letters, emails, and other documents related to the president's duties be preserved for retention by the National Archives and Records Administration at the end of an administration. That includes Section 2071, which states that anyone who willfully and unlawfully conceals, removes, mutilates, obliterates, or destroys any record, proceeding, map, book, paper, document, or other thing filed or deposited in public office can be fined or face up to 3 years in prison if convicted. Those laws have never been used against a former president. The allegation of the removal of classified documents, classified material, can trigger other laws beyond the PRA that bar the removal of such materials without authorization and without proper protection. Those laws were raised with regard to former FBI Director James Comey removing FBI material and then leaking information to the press. The director of the FBI?
The director.
Comey clearly violated federal law, but was not prosecuted.
Slap on the wrist.
And that's why whenever I put together the card, I always have this maxim handy. Quis custodiet ipsos custodis. Who's going to watch the watchers? Certainly not the director of the FBI. In the case of President Bill Clinton's former national security advisor, Sandy Berger, the violations involve stuffing classified material into his pants and socks. Wow, didn't they have any dress code at the White House in those days? To remove them from the archives and to really retrieve them later. Berger was spared any jail time and allowed to plead to a misdemeanor for improper attire. Beep, beep. He did not even lose his security clearance permanently and was given a 3-year suspension. Likewise, General David Petraeus was accused of giving access to classified information to his alleged lover and was also given a generous plea. So I was listening to The Point on the way over, and there was a quote from Dersh, Alan Dershowitz, who was a Democrat and a lawyer, and he used to be, all in with the Democrats on every issue. But boy, has he had an epiphany. And Dersh says this was unnecessary. Trump has agreed to cooperate with the archives to work on this. Trump is in New York and Trump Tower right now. He's not at Mar-a-Lago, so you don't need to do one of these no-knock, burst-in, flashbang, everybody hit the deck to stop the person who is in custody of the documents from flushing them down the toilet like you see on TV all the time. He's not even there. So Dersh said a subpoena would have been fine. Give him a subpoena, what lawyers call, let's hear the Law and Order notebook, a subpoena ducis tecum. A subpoena ducis tecum means bring this crap with you. Subpoena ducis tecum, you must appear at 10 p.m. at the office of Vanessa Williams and bring with you every birth certificate that got voided during the time that you were counsel. Yeah, that's what the Dersh says should have happened. So I know this is going to burn up the news for a long time. And what's going to happen is that everybody is going to pretty much zero in on it and say the same thing that everybody else, except for my buddy Turley, who will go one step farther. All right, let's break for the big halftime show. And Jose, I want to see that T-shirt commercial.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Mar-a-Lago raided by the feds. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The former president's Florida home searched Monday by a squad of dozens of FBI agents.
Former President Trump used words and phrases such as occupied and under siege to confirm what he called a large group of FBI agents entering his Florida home. Neither the FBI nor the Justice Department, which oversees it, had immediately commented on why agents were sent in.
Fox's Gernal Scott, some of Mr. Trump's family members say the FBI cracked a safe that was empty and took boxes of documents dating back to the Trump presidency, documents which Eric Trump says FBI agents were allowed to review months ago. Eric Trump also telling Fox's Hannity this was political.
This is Banana Republic antics, having a home of the 45th president of the United States raided by FBI agents, safes broken open. This is not who we are as a democracy.
Reaction from lawmakers. Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan says the Attorney General and the FBI Director need to answer some questions.
What was on the warrant? What were you really doing? What were you looking for? Why not talk to President Trump and have him give the information you're after? This is unbelievable.
House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy issuing a statement telling Attorney General Garland to preserve your documents and clear your calendar, promising oversight hearings of the Justice Department should Republicans take control of the House following the midterm elections. The White House says they were not informed in advance of the raid and referred reporters to the Justice Department, which is yet to comment on it. Past the time they said it would stop, China continues its aggressive actions around Taiwan, including what effectively amounts to a blockade and several warships hugging the median line in the Taiwan Strait over House Speaker Pelosi's visit to Taiwan 1 week ago. Wall Street Monday, the Dow gained 30 points. NASDAQ lost 13. The S&P 500, 5 points lower. America is listening to Fox News.
Hafaday and mabuhay. I am Dennis Rodriguez Jr., a proud Filipino Gomanian who cares about our island and our people. Throughout my years of government service, I have advocated for adequate health care, education, and a stronger public safety workforce. I support Lou and Josh, and I'm confident that this team will prioritize the needs of our people like they have done throughout the pandemic. There is more work to be done, and I'm confident that Lou and Josh are the right leaders to move our island forward. Mga kapwa kong Pilipino, maraming pong salamat sa tiwala ninyo sa akin noon senador po ako. Hinihiling ko po uli ang tulong at tiwala ninyo. Sana po iboto ninyo si Lou at Josh para gobernador at vice-gobernador. Sila po ang ating pwedeng tiwalaan. I'm voting for Lou and Josh, and I'm humbly asking my friends and family to vote for them too. I'm all in.
This is Governor Lou Leon Guerrero, and I approve this message.
His COVID isolation ended, President Biden pledging federal help to eastern Kentucky on Monday after touring some of the areas hit hard by last month's flooding.
They're not just Kentuckians, they're Americans. They're Americans. This happened in America. American problem. And we're all Americans. Everybody has an obligation to help. We have the capacity to do this.
The president promised to put the areas damaged by the flooding back better than they were before. Michigan's Governor Gretchen Whitmer has now tested positive for COVID-19, now isolating with what she says are mild symptoms. President plans a signing ceremony today.
The CHIPS Plus Science Act dedicates more than $50 billion to the semiconductor industry, doling out subsidies and tax credits to manufacturers who build computer chips in the U.S. The measure also invests more than $200 billion in new scientific research aimed at NASA and robotics. Congress approved the package last month after months of negotiations on the size and scope of federal funding. In Washington, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
It's primary election day in 4 states today.
In Minnesota's 1st District, voters will choose who will finish out the term of the late Congressman Jim Hagedorn. But they will also hold a primary election to see who will face whom in the fall in that district. In the special election primary in May, Republican farmer and state USDA Director of Rural Development Brad Finstead beat state representative backed by some in the House Freedom Caucus, Jeremy Munson. but only by a point. Now, Finstead will face Democrat, retired CEO of Hormel Foods, Jeff Ettinger, in the special election. But then, voters are also deciding the primary, where Finstead is again facing Munson. While this is a likely Republican district, Ettinger, in this inflationary environment, has been running a campaign highlighting a career in making food affordable and understanding supply chains. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Happy day. This is Clara Manglona from Security Title. A power of attorney can be a useful tool in a real estate transaction, but if abused, it can result in devastating loss. Choosing your representative should be done with the utmost care and should be very specific about the powers being granted. To mitigate loss, the team at Security Title confirms with the owner prior to using a power of attorney to sell the property. Each transaction is unique. Let the professionals at Security Title use our experience to facilitate a secure closing. We are here to help.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Big halftime show here on Tall Tales. We ran the commercial for the Tall Tales t-shirt. I should be able to give you directions as to how to go about buying those before the end of the week. But once again, I got to warn you, we're going to be selling the t-shirts, but the beard doesn't come with the t-shirts. You got to furnish the beard yourself.
Not even if they act now.
Not even if you buy early, special discount.
No coupon.
Yeah. So I'm working on a place where you can market a simple, couple of clicks on the internet, and as if by magic your T-shirt will show up in the mail. So I'm working on that, and then I'm also kind of dickering with Mike Lindell to see if he could do some national advertising for me. Maybe throw in a T-shirt with every two My Pillows that you buy.
Your face on every pillow.
Bob's face on every pillow.
Bob's face on every pillow.
Man, those things that sell like hot cakes.
I would feel safe sleeping that night.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's go back to the card. Next item on the card is Dennis Rodriguez. And Dennis Rodriguez is signed up. Dennis Rodriguez is all in. I've heard his commercials on the radio. I've heard him take a crack at Tagalog. He's saying that a lot of work still needs to be done. He's going to go with Lou and Josh. And then you know what I did? I went to the staffing pattern for the governor's office.
Huh.
Yeah, and this is what I found. There is a special assistant in the staffing pattern named Dennis Rodriguez, who is costing us, you, me, and everybody else, $112,184.26. Salary and benefits. A $90,000 salary, and then a $20,385 contribution to retirement, $494.26 for, I don't know what that's for, and then for insurance. So it's big bucks, right?
So we kind of did pay for this ad.
Yeah. So, you know, the old saying about, you know, there's some guys that, you know, they've got integrity. It doesn't make any difference what you offer them. They don't have a price. That's not Dennis Rodriguez. $112,000, $184.26, and you got Dennis Rodriguez. And then he's shown in the staffing pattern as a special assistant. Now, there's a lot that few two words tells you, because we do have our so-called Mini-Hatch Act, and in order to be subject to the Mini-Hatch Act, you have to come within the definition of employee. And someone who is a special assistant to the governor does not come within the definition of employee. Therefore, the Mini-Hatch Act does not apply to that person. So that person is free to go out and engage in political activities, campaigning, endorsements, etc. Now, I also see Robert C. Alvarez right below Dennis's name. My suspicion would be that this is Bobby Alvarez.
He is, yep. That sounds like a Bobby Alvarez. Would that be the person who was letting loose the Facebook administrative response team? Letting loose the farts?
The farts. Well, I don't know. You know, what's in the name? Robert C. Alvarez. There aren't that many Alvarezes. And if you watch the show on Monday, you're damn glad of that. That would be Hope Alvarez. And I know a guy named Bobby Alvarez. I only know one named Bobby Alvarez. And, of course, Bobby is the naan querido for the name Robert, the nickname for Robert, right? So it could very well be him. He's knocking down $68,749.26 salary and benefits. But he is not a special assistant. He is a staff assistant. So he can't go out and openly campaign.
Well, that's how it works then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so even personal preferences? Let's say on social media.
Yeah.
You can't say I'm going to vote for because of your title, your position?
That's the way I would read the so-called Mini-Hatch Act.
I don't think the Mini-Hatch Act took into consideration social media, huh?
No, when the Mini-Hatch Act was set up, we didn't have email, for crying out loud.
This is interesting. It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah. So,
especially with the revelation of the Facebook response team.
Yeah. So tomorrow I'll do a little workup on that and tell you what you can do and can't do. It doesn't matter what the medium is. Even if you happen to have a soapbox in the trunk of your car and pull up at the at Skinner Plaza and jump out and start screaming from your soapbox, that still counts. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting. Dennis Rodriguez, $112,184.26, special assistant, in charge of what? So all of you challengers out there, all of you folks that would like to be senators but are not senators right now, a good issue for you. Go through our so-called Mini-Hatch Act and tighten it up. You know, I could understand why you couldn't make it apply to an elected official, because elected officials get elected because they're politicians. That part I could understand. But to take it out as far as special assistant, we would hope that a special assistant to the governor spends 100% of his time working on stuff that benefits the people, not the governor. But we would be wrong, given the current state of the law and given just what we've seen so far of Dennis Rodriguez. So I'll bring Dennis back tomorrow, and we'll do a little workup on that.
I've seen mayors in campaign ads for the executive position. So mayors are not a part.
They're not employees. They are elected officials.
So they can campaign.
They can campaign
for other candidates.
Yeah, and anyone who is appointed by the governor and confirmed by the legislature can campaign.
Got it.
Now, sort of the same considerations as the governor, but I think I'd like it a lot better if we said no. That if you go down to the port and you want to ship something, you shouldn't get better service if you're a Democrat than if you're a Republican, or any place else in the government. I don't want to pick on. I'm not going to pick on Rory today. I'll put that off for a long time. Tomorrow. All right. Next on the card is Tom the Plumber Shea. Now, when I talk about Tom Shea as a plumber, I'm not going all the way back to Watergate. For you younger fellas, Richard Nixon, when he was the president, was angered because things that were not supposed to be public had been leaked out of his office. So he put together a gang of Cuban exiles, guys like G. Gordon Liddy, and a few other guys, and they were called the plumbers. And it was their job to find out where the leaks were and plug the leaks. Kind of Richard Nixon's SWAT team, or Richard Nixon's Rapid Response Force. Well, once you set something up like that, they're not going to just sit around and watch TV. So they, had these guys with all of these Mission Impossible type skills. No, Carl Nelson was not part of it. He was too young at the time. If it happened now, you could damn better believe it, he'd be involved.
And he'd deny it.
Yeah. So the plumbers did other things. They raided the office of the psychiatrist of Daniel Ellsberg. Daniel Ellsberg was the government employee that leaked the Pentagon Papers to the New York Times. Really, really embarrassing to the government in general and to Nixon in particular, because the Pentagon Papers showed that for a long, long time, folks at the Department of Defense knew that we weren't going to win the war in Vietnam. But Nixon had, I think, 3 speechwriters writing speeches around the phrase light at the end of the tunnel. But they found out that the light at the end of the tunnel was a rapidly approaching train. So the plumbers broke in there into a psychiatrist's office, figuring they could maybe find some dirt on Daniel Ellsberg to impeach him. And then they broke into the Democrat headquarters in the Watergate Hotel. And the idea was to see what they could find and to bug it so they could get intel on what the Democrats intended to do. Well, it was a pretty amateurish break-in, and they got busted. Parenthetically, I stayed in the Watergate Hotel one time. I had to go to Washington on short notice. I couldn't get a hotel that I could afford. I had to stay at the Watergate. No press, though. So they got busted. And Nixon could have come out and said, there are people that are connected to my administration that got overzealous and did some things they shouldn't have done. They're going to be prosecuted. I'm very disappointed in what happened. I apologize to the American public. I've taken steps to see that this never happens again. It's not what he did. And that's where the theory that the cover-up is always worse than the crime really fleshed out. Because before it was over, Nixon was impeached. Haldeman, Ehrlichman, Dean, I think at least perhaps 10 people in the Nixon administration actually went to jail for perjury and all. The Attorney General, Mitchell, went to jail as part of their part in the cover-up. So when you hear the word plumbers, if you've been around for a while, that's what you think of. That's not Tom Shea. Took me a little while to get here, but I'm back to Tom Shea now, right? Tom Shea, the doctor who has delivered more than 10,000 babies at Guam Memorial Hospital's ancient maternity ward, is tired of the government's of Guam's excuses. That's ran and candid. It was nearly a decade ago when he led the effort to have the Guam legislature appropriate millions for the renovation and modernization of the maternity ward into a state-of-the-art labor and delivery unit. Now, you know who would not be in favor of spending this kind of money. What a waste of money. You know, had to ask Vanessa Williams. She put the plug on that one right away. And I suppose that Lou was in the legislature at the time, 10 years ago. I can't imagine her voting for such a ridiculous expense. She would know how to really economize on a labor and delivery room. The Calvo administration issued the procurement, but the financing hit a snag when the bank run by the woman who would become governor next demanded more than the law authorized. Now, who would that woman be?
Starts with a...
And that reminds me, Jose.
Yeah.
Who's the guy in the middle of that picture? Who is that mystery man? Come on, you Facebookers. You haven't been any help on this one at all. The guy between Josh and Nancy standing behind them, the guy with the shaved head. Who is that man? All right. Anyhow, going back to Candid. When the bank run by the woman who would become governor next demanded more than the law authorized. So the maternity ward modernization became a campaign issue in 2018. The candidates for governor promised to make it a priority. 4 years and $1 billion in federal discretionary funding later, nothing has happened. And again, Dr. Shea is taking up the fight to get the project financed and done. Quote, mothers and babies deserve to be a priority. Wow, where would that?
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? I don't think that's going to pass muster with the Democrats. Certainly, well, Vanessa resigned, you know, as a matter of honor. She did the honorable thing, and she just resigned on Sunday.
And I don't think mothers and babies is in the Bois dictionary.
Yeah. Mothers and babies deserve to be a priority. Dr. Shea wrote in a post this morning, 24,000 plus mothers with their babies came through GMH and have suffered enough. They cannot wait 4 more years or 6 or 8 more years. The GMH OB ward, labor rooms, and nursery must be updated now. In the same Pacific, all right, there's a quote from Pacific Times article that I somehow managed not to bring along. The bank connected to the governor hindered the project by putting last-minute possible requirements into the loan being sought by GovGuam. Additionally, it was also reported that there was $650 million in government accounts sitting in the Bank of Guam, and they wanted guarantee money for the loan. This is, after the pandemic money became available. Multiple local news outlets reported the Bank of Guam's additional loan requirements were not permitted by the project's authorization legislation. In January 24, 2018, Pacific Daily News article titled, Gita to Senators, We Can't Do What Bank of Guam Asked Us. Author Heidi Waino Gilbert included statements by then GMH financial officer Benita Manglotnia, former director of administration, and GMH physician Jonathan Seidel, which were published as follows. GMH CFO Benita Manglonia stated that Bank of Guam was making extraordinary requirements as part of their negotiation on the financing contract. Rojas told senators that the Bank of Guam's requests were not allowed under the project's authorizing legislation. Dr. Jonathan Seidel questioned why Bank of Guam is making these new requirements. He asked, are these requirements going to be the new Bank of Guam standard? He suggested that something strange was going on. The governor's 2018 election year claimed that the issue was financial management and that she alone had the wherewithal to get the project done, gave hope to doctors, nurses, and the community that the maternity ward would actually be modernized. Sort of like a guarantee. It's been 4 years. Not one finger has been lifted to get it done. And Dr. Shea is tired of excuses. Now, if you looked at this on Candid, you'd see a video of Dr. Shea in the latrine, the head, the restroom, probably the ladies' room at the labor and delivery room, showing viewers that in order to flush material, I won't be any more graphic than that, in order to properly flush material down the toilet had to be flushed 4 times. This is absolutely unacceptable. It's not unacceptable. You know, I suspect that Sabina Paris will get on this when she finds out how much water we're wasting. Being the eco-fascist and environmental wacko that she is, she'll probably step in and say, you can't do that, right? But, you know, if anything, the toilet's got to work. You know, if you want to know if a business is well run, if you want to know that a business isn't well run, check out the restrooms. Are the restrooms clean? What do they smell like? Is there a garbage bag pulled over one of the toilets or one of the urinals and a sign that says out of order? These are not well-run restaurants.
And usually those happen to be put at the bottom of the priority list, even though they should be up. But we're talking about a hospital here.
Exactly. Yeah, this is a hospital. So fortunately, we got GRMC. And I know that there are those who can be critical of GRMC. I'm not one of them. But I really think that I could eat off the floor at GRMC. It is so clean. Not to mention that they've got a new GM over there whose name is Eric Klitzkie.
Relation?
Well, it was mentioned on Ray's show. The GM at GRMC, Eric Klitzkie. I said, wow, who in the hell is that? And then I heard it again. So I was at a function last week, and I ran into this guy who, believe it or not, is taller than I am.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Were you looking through your history?
And he was a tailgater.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so of course he had to come over and shake and howdy and tell me how much he liked the show. He gave me his business card. His name is Eric Klitzkie.
Oh.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Eric Klitzkie.
Okay.
Yeah. So he said, Eric, what's her name? Eric Klitzkie. Okay. Close enough, right?
Very close.
Yeah, all of those silly names that end in ski, like Kowalski and Kozlowski and Klitzkie and Plitzky, they all sound the same.
Big tandem. I did not know that that's genderfied as well. In Poland, the females are ska, and the men are ski.
Yeah.
It's going to be very bad for the woke people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, well, we can't tell Polak jokes anymore, so I think I'm safe for now, right?
Mark's safe from jokes.
Yeah. Okay, let's head for Chicago in the 7th-inning stretch.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Choice Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show.
Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Okay, here we are. Next item on the card. We're going to go national for a little while. And this one is called DeSantis versus abortion. And I'm talking about Governor Ron DeSantis of the Free State of Florida, who is behaving the way a governor ought to behave most of the time, but not all of the time. And, you know, I don't pretend to be even-handed and fair on the show. I tell you, I give you my opinion, and I don't see myself as calling balls and strikes. But I do pay attention to what I see are dichotomies, things that I don't want to tolerate in people that I like and people whose principles I favor. And you've heard me talk about this before. I don't like to see someone using the government's back scratcher to scratch his own back. In other words, you shouldn't use your government position to further your own personal desires, or your own personal ends, or whatever. Whatever you do with the government's equipment, material, money, time, etc., should at least arguably benefit the people. I am afraid that Governor DeSantis here has, on 2 occasions, used the government's back scratcher to scratch his own back. And I'll get into this. On Thursday, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis announced he had suspended woke Soros-backed state attorney Andrew Warren. Now there's one right there, Warren. If the guy's name is Warren, I'm probably starting out not liking him very well, even though he's more than likely a Native American, right? Yeah. State Attorney Andrew Warren, after his declaration that he would refuse to enforce any Florida laws restricting abortion or transgender surgeries for minors. Quote, state attorneys have a duty to prosecute crimes as defined in Florida law, not to pick and choose which laws to enforce based on his personal agenda. It is my duty to hold Florida elected officials to the highest standards for the people of Florida. I have the utmost trust that Judge Susan Lopez will lead the office through this transition and faithfully uphold the rule of law. As awesome as it was to see DeSantis take such a stand for the rule of law, this story is even better than we thought. According to the executive order, DeSantis sent police to remove Warren. As of the signing of this executive order, the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, assisted by other law enforcement agencies as necessary, is requested to, 1, assist in the immediate transition of Andrew Warren from the Office of State Attorney for the 13th Judicial Circuit of Florida with access only to retrieve his personal belongings. 2, ensure that no files, papers, documents, notes, records, computers, or removable storage media are removed from the office of the state attorney for the 13th Judicial Circuit of Florida or any of his staff. That's what he said. So he sent in the cops. On Thursday evening, DeSantis explained to Fox News' Tucker Carlson that Soros prosecutors around the country, now we know what Soros prosecutors are, have basically taken it upon themselves to determine which laws should be followed and which laws should not be followed. Here's what Soros is doing. It's actually smart on his part. They can't get these things enacted in a legislature where you're just going to let the criminals run amok, DeSantis explained. So what they do, he will get involved in these Democrat primaries in a Democrat area. He'll flush $1 million to get the radical to win the primary. Then they usually win the general election because of party affiliation difference in jurisdiction. Like in California, if you win the Democrat Party, you're going to win the election, unless you're running in one of the about 2 places where there are Republicans. DeSantis continued. So then you get them in there, and what they do is they want to change the criminal justice system through non-enforcement. So it's a total end run around our constitutional system. The results obviously have been destructive around the country, but it also undermines the idea that ours is supposed to be a government of laws, not a government of individual men. I'm going to repeat that. Ours is supposed to be a government of laws, not of individual men. Well, let's sort this out. We know that the constitutional ban, flawed as it was, has been done away with by the Dobbs case. The regulation of abortion is now left strictly up to the states. If states don't want to criminalize abortion, they don't have to. If they want to criminalize it, starting out from conception, they have that ability. And I don't want to hear states' rights. States don't have rights. States aren't people. States have powers. So it's within the state's police power to regulate abortion. So I don't like it when I see a district attorney who says, I'm not going to enforce these laws on abortion. That's wrong. That's a government of men and not a government of laws. Now, I've explained before that prosecutors, and in most states the prosecutors are called district attorneys, it's where most of the prosecution is done. And the official in any state that has the greatest amount of unbounded discretion is the prosecutor. Nobody can tell the prosecutor what to do or what not to do. A governor can't say, I want this guy prosecuted, or lay off on my brother-in-law, etc. And that's good. That's exactly the way it should be. In fact, it's exactly the way it must be if we're going to do things, if we're going to be a government of laws, not a government of men. If you have a district attorney like this guy Warren in Florida, the remedy comes every time there's an election. You vote him out. Now, what DeSantis did was he used the government's back scratcher to scratch his own back. And he's upfront about it. I'm getting rid of this guy because he didn't do the kind of prosecution that I like. So if you tolerate it in somebody that you do like because he's reaching a result that you like, your name is instantly submitted to the committee that awards the We Become What We Hate award. The We Become What We Hate award is awarded to those who show that they can condone in themselves that which they condemn in others. It's not an honorable title. And unfortunately, that's what DeSantis did. DeSantis could have done other things. He could have gotten Jim Moylan to write the guy a letter. He could have used his bully pulpit. He's the governor of the state. He could have done a lot of stuff, but because the prosecutor didn't prosecute the way DeSantis wanted, he wanted him out of there. Now imagine we've got a governor like Huey Long. Anybody out there remember Huey Long, the governor of Louisiana? Who once upon a time somebody said, "Governor, that's against the law." Huey Long said, "I am the law." In Louisiana, a great movie based on a Robert Penn Warren novel starring Broderick Crawford. What was the name of that? Yeah, it'll come to me right after the show. So that's what you got. That's the price you pay once you are awarded the We Become What We Hate award. And unfortunately, this is not the first time for Ron. You'll recall that way back in the 60s, the Florida legislature gave a tremendous rent-seeking deal to the Disney World folks. Rent-seeking, good word to look up if you're not familiar with it. Rent-seeking, economic rent. So the legislature of Florida gave the Disney World folks a tremendous economic rent advantage. They created something called the Brushy Creek Improvement District. And they allowed Disney World to, in effect, run that improvement district. And it functions like a county in Florida. So Disney World is, in effect, not only the occupant of the Brushy Creek Improvement District it was also the government of the Brushy Creek Amusement District. Now, I could see senators in Florida thinking, man, we got to get, if you look at Disneyland and then you look what Walt wants to build down here, what Walt wants to build down here makes Disneyland look like a 4th of July carnival in comparison. This would be a tremendous break for Florida, tremendous economic development. And it was. It put Orlando used to be just a sleepy Central Florida town. Now it's a big city. So you could see why they did it. But it's economic rent. And someone, a capitalist like me, abhors economic rent. It distorts the market. It taints the efficient allocation of resources. It is a pathway to cronyism, if not corruption. It's something that we should avoid at all costs. So it shouldn't have been done in the first place. So I like and then when Ron came out with his bill to protect kids in the first, second, and third grades, said, you can't come in here and teach this woke sex education to kids in the first, second, and third grades. And it was well-drafted legislation. It's the kind of legislation that I thought I would never see, having been the parent of a first, second, third grader, having been there myself, having been a teacher. It's just the kind of thing you wouldn't think you'd need to legislate. But of course, we were all wrong because the wokesters, want to start grooming kids in the first grade for their sexual anarchy. So it was a good law, and the words "don't say gay" did not appear in that statute. The word gay was not in the statute. But of course, the wokesters branded it the "don't say gay" bill. And the media cartel picked it up and ran with it, condemned the "don't say gay" building. DeSantis was a homophobe, on and on, book burning, the whole thing, right? And Disney World, the managers of Disney World just kind of stayed out of it until their woke employees said, where are you guys on this thing? You got to get involved. You can't just sit this out and you're going to be on the wrong side of history. Which is exactly where I want to be. I want to be on the wrong side of history. So the Disney World management caved in, and they came out and opposed DeSantis on his "don't say gay" bill. You can't say that, you homophobe, on and on and on, right? So DeSantis said, all right, you want to play hardball? Put your batting helmet on. He goes out to the mound. You've heard of the 100-mile-an-hour fastball? DeSantis' fastball was so fast that the radar couldn't even measure the speed. He gets the legislature of Florida to repeal the Brushy Creek legislation. So now Disney World just sits there like everybody else. So they really, really ruined it for themselves. So was I glad to see that happen? Did Disney World deserve it? Was DeSantis right on the don't say gay? Was he right on the grooming? Was he right on everything? Yes, he was. I really liked it. Did he use the government's back scratcher to scratch his own back? He did. Now, it was the legislature, of course, that repealed. He signed the legislation, and I suspect had it not been for his urging, it wouldn't have happened. But he still opened that door to those who are candidates for the Become What We Hate award. Let's say that, let's imagine that there's a new hospital that opens in Orlando, a hospital run by the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church says, we are going to provide top health care for everybody. We've got special programs. If you can't afford it, we're not going to turn anybody away. We are going to engage in all forms of reproductive health. Check your dictionary. That does not mean abortion. We will not do abortions here. We know the difference between an ectopic pregnancy and abortion, surgery for an ectopic pregnancy and abortion. That's us. We are a Catholic hospital. So you get some woke atheist as the governor of Florida. Well, we're going to cancel their permits and their license, and that economic development grant. We're going to call that loan. We're going to use our back scratcher to scratch that hospital out of business. You can't do that. It's not fair. You remember a guy named Ron DeSantis? Yeah, so that's the danger when you see things like that. And this is, I hope, one of the thrusts of Tall Tales. It's really easy to read the news, find something you really like. Hooray, I really like
Be
that.
the cheerleader, yeah.
Yeah, be the cheerleader. And unfortunately, that's most of the media cartel. They're the cheerleader for one side or the other. Now, I'm a cheerleader for Ron DeSantis. He's doing what a governor ought to do. But I'm not going to be the cheerleader for Ron DeSantis when he becomes an applicant for the We Become We Hate award, because you've all heard of the doctrine of unintended consequences. It's things like this that give rise to the application of that particular doctrine. Okay, we're going to go to Churchill Downs, and I'm going to come back for a little more Ron DeSantis.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarte Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Biggs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
DeSantis versus Mind Virus. And I got a letter from Ron. Yeah. And this is how it goes. Robert, that's me. Florida is the freest state in the nation because we reject the wokeness that has taken over other states and institutions. While blue states and corporate America fully embrace this mind virus, Florida has stood strong against ideologies that seek to incite division and hate amongst our citizens. You don't need me to tell you that our country is heading down a dangerous path. The Democrat machine is infecting our nation from the inside out. How many times have I said that? And the root of it all is a woke and destructive ideology. The incessant need to control every aspect of our lives and force one point of view on us all, or risk being canceled is a mind virus. A mind virus. We all know what a virus is. This is a mind virus that is destroying any institution that it gets hold of. I think we're immune here at Tall Tales, Jose.
We're inoculated.
Yeah. Well,
without the needle.
Yeah. We've seen this in all corners of our lives, but most egregiously in our education system. Other states have bent the knee to the woke mob, injecting critical race theory and gender ideologies into our youngest and most impressionable kids. But I can tell you, in the state of Florida, we've drawn a very clear line in the sand. We've said that the purpose of our education system is to educate kids, not to indoctrinate our kids. What a novel idea. The left wants to use critical race theory to distort American history in an effort to delegitimize our founding fathers and the principles of this country, with the goal of replacing it with their leftist ideology. You and I both know that will be a disaster for our society and our country, Robert. And we do both know that. He must be a tailgater. He knows so much about my thought processes here.
And your name.
And my name, yeah. We know this is woke ideology. This woke ideology is rejected by the overwhelming majority of Americans. In Florida, we reject that. The truth is, this woke agenda has injected itself into the inner workings of elite institutions and poisoned their entire frameworks. We see it at the universities. We see it in corporate America. We've even seen it in the military. They're trying to take the basic structure and purpose for these organizations and turn them into parasites for the Democrat machine. Corporate media and big tech long ago abandoned their purpose to inform and connect people and transformed it into the censorship arm of the Democrat Party, stifling dissent, stifling conservative voices, and silencing any and all points of view that differ from their own. In Florida, we've rejected these woke ideologies seeking to further divide us rather than unite us. We're standing up to the Democrat machine, to the legacy media, and to woke corporations. We're sending a strong message while we're doing it. Your lies might fly in California, but they will not be tolerated in the state of Florida. Democrats have taken note of our freedom agenda, and they've made Florida their #1 target for elections this November. They know we are the greatest threat to their war on democracy because we are the strongest soldiers in the battle for liberty and freedom. I will never back down from the fight to keep Florida free. As we get closer to November, I need to know I can count on your support to protect our great state. The battle has only just begun. Are you with me? Yeah, I'm with him. It's an hafaisun zona para salapi para idonia campaign. So, usangani ko no kwakwaha salapelo maskino juso dispensa na. what I might give to him, I think I probably will give him $25. It's worth it. I gave $25 to Ron Johnson the other day. Yeah, senator from Wisconsin. Yeah, I lived in Florida once upon a time, so those two states are kind of special to me. So that's Ron DeSantis. I noticed that Bonnie said that is the federal requirement for all healthcare clinics, hospitals, doctors, said all healthcare facilities, and they get federal funds. Oh, she's talking about masks. Yeah, okay. Well, I got into the bribery thing the other day. You know, that if the Democrats keep talking about we've got to federalize Roe. We've got to put it in a federal statute. Well, you look at Article 1, Section 8, you won't see anything in there about regulating abortion. However, and I explained this the other day, Frothingham versus Mellon, Massachusetts versus Mellon, that when it comes to bribing states to do something, Article 1, Section 8 is kind of out the door. So I could see the Democrats introducing legislation to say, if you want to keep your federal funds, then you better go right on up to primary infanticide, or we're going to jerk your federal funds away from you. And when Lulian Guerrero is no longer government of Guam, we're going to appoint her to be the enforcement agent of this, since she's a nurse.
That's kind of how they did the highway funding.
Oh, yeah. And 21.
That's actually how it was, yeah.
21-year-old drinking, and yeah. Okay, so I go from DeSantis, the points that DeSantis made, onto an article on the card, Gaslighting versus Orange Rice. And this is by a guy named, of all things, Chris Queen. I don't know. This is what he said. It's no secret that the mainstream media has abandoned objective reporting for a long time. The left-leaning and often more than leading narratives from the press are hard to miss. But there's more at play than just reporting the news from one particular viewpoint. The mainstream media, along with social media and cultural tastemakers, and that's an interesting one, cultural tastemakers. You know, it's just in bad taste to say that Josh Tenorio is the first queer lieutenant governor of the United States. Much better to say gay person, right? Tastemakers. Tastemakers attempt to lead the public to question anything that doesn't hew to a far-left narrative. The end result, in the hopeful minds of the media, is that everyone who consumes their media will move to the left politically and culturally, maybe not even know they're doing it. It's a form of what we've come to know as gaslighting. For the uninitiated, gaslighting is intentionally distorting reality to make you feel like what you're seeing or feeling isn't real. The term came from the 1944 film Gaslight, in which Gregory Anton manipulates his wife, played by Ingrid Bergman, who won Best Oscar actress for her role, into thinking that she's insane. Husband manipulates wife into thinking she's insane. Instead of making you think you're crazy, the media wants you to think your conservative, libertarian, or even non-woke liberal views are insane. I don't know what a woman is. I'm not a biologist, she said. And it's masterful manipulation. Christian blogger and author Natasha Crane, are we there? Yeah, okay, I'm going to come back to this tomorrow. It's a really very interesting article. But right now, I got to say goodbye to our president. Let's go, Brandon!
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The FBI raids Mar-a-Lago. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. An unprecedented raid on the home of a former president. Dozens of FBI agents seizing documents from the Florida resident, former President Trump.
Sources familiar tell Fox News this FBI raid of former President Trump's Palm Beach home is related to the taking of potential classified information from the White House upon leaving office January 20th of last year. The National Archives says there were 15 boxes that contained what it believed to be presidential records, noting they must be preserved.
Fox's Mike Emanuel. Sources tell Fox News the agents took the boxes without verifying their contents. The former president announced the raid in a statement calling it prosecutorial misconduct and the weaponization of the justice system. Mr. Trump was in New York at the time of the raid. Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan tells Fox's The Ingram Angle some hard questions need to be asked of Attorney General Merrick Garland and FBI Director Christopher Wray.
We had the raid of a former president's home in America. So heck, we deserve answers now.
The White House says it was not notified of the raid in advance. No comment yet from the Justice Department. The Republican National Committee in a statement calling the raid outrageous and an abuse of power. Out of COVID isolation, President Biden toured some of the flood-damaged areas of eastern Kentucky on Monday, pledging federal assistance.
I promise you, we're staying, the federal government, along with the state and county and the city, we're staying until everybody's back to where they were.
The president also told reporters he expects the climate change and tax bill passed by the Senate on Sunday will help Democrat candidates in November's midterm elections. The House is expected to vote on that bill by the weekend. Father and son Greg and Travis McMichael, convicted of murder in jogger Ahmaud Arbery's death in 2020 on Monday, been sentenced to life in prison for committing a federal hate crime. America is listening to Fox News.